Everybody, this is Jim at SP500chart.com. It's a little bit before 3 o'clock on July 12th, 2020. We're going to take a look at this chart for the week ending July 10th. And we're going to do so after I remind you that the website and the video are for educational purposes only. Nothing stated in the site or in the video is intended to be used as investment advice. I control lines on charts, but you have to draw your own conclusions from your own research and make investment decisions that are suitable for your personal financial situation. I am not a licensed financial professional. I'm just a guy who draws lines on charts. So let's take a look. Well, sort of assuming you've been following things pretty much all along, you know that we were in what appeared to be a rising channel. This lower line was always sort of up for grabs. I never got settled in on that because not everything lines up. Just the same, I think this is a clear line of resistance right here. Just for jollies, as I'm looking at this here, I do these videos, I look at it, and then sometimes things just kind of strike me as I'm in the middle of it. So I'm going to make a duplicate of this line, created parallel, and I'm going to drop that down to this low point right here. And lo and behold, would you look at that? That is exactly where we tagged. That was the low actually in that consolidation triangle. And I think I'm going to keep that there. And I think this guy is going to go bye-bye. That seems to make more sense. But we still had these 2 points here and here and here. So it's still a bit sloppy, but let's go with this for now. Let's just we'll extend that on out a bit. So we'll have that on the chart going forward. So anyway, we sort of messed around, looked like we were breaking some support lines other than this one right here. Then we recognized a potential triangle right here. We broke out from that. And now, if we zoom in on this, it looks like we may be actually seeing a sort of a morph into an inverted head and shoulders pattern. It seems like that's all I talk about anymore, but that's what we see a lot. And I'll remind you, week before last, we saw this little inverted head and shoulders pattern right here, and we know from experience that it's not unusual for the inverted head of a inverted head and shoulders pattern to itself be an inverted head and shoulders pattern. If we go back to this big inverted head and shoulders pattern that fell prey to the COVID scare, you'll remember in the head of that there was a smaller, still a good size, took almost 6 months, but it is a smaller inverted head and shoulders pattern that formed the majority of the head of that pattern. So if we look at this one, maybe this is a inverted head and shoulders, and the head is an inverted head and shoulders. We'll know more once we get into this week, because the pattern would not be confirmed until we break out over this line right here. Also mentioned this past week that we might be looking at some gap resistance from that gap down on June 11th. And twice this past week, it looks like we tried to approach that and so far have failed to get over it. But that doesn't mean we're always going to remain under it. I don't think we will, because we've got a target up here at about 33.60, and depending on when this pattern does, if it does break out, the worst case would be it breaks out at the open tomorrow, and from that we would have a pattern of 33.75. On the other hand, if it were to break out in 4 days, then that pattern moves, that target moves up just a little bit. But let's wait till we break out before we call that an inverted head and shoulders pattern. It's nothing yet. You got to get confirmation. So, what happened this week? Well, if you look at things, we came into this week on what appeared to be sort of a weak note, closing at the lows of the day on Thursday. But remember, that was before the 4th of July weekend, which was a long weekend, and a lot of times you'll get people who are unwilling to carry their positions, be they long or short, through a long weekend. In this case, I believe the market was net long, so therefore we had net selling going into that 3-day weekend. Then on Monday, we gapped up, came up to where we would expect some gap resistance. Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, sold down in what now appears to be a bull flag that broke out falsely on Wednesday, came back. Here, let me zoom in. False breakout, back into the pattern with a little overswing, then a breakout again, back test early on Friday, and we closed very near the highs of the week and the highs for the day. So if you look at this as a weekly chart, and if you were to just zoom in on that candle right there, it would seem to bode pretty well for some follow-through potentially this week. So we'll certainly keep an eye on that. There again is that little bull flag. You see the false breakout late on the 8th, early on the 9th, slammed back down into that flag by mid-morning on the 9th, rallied over it again, back tested it, and then we started to move up and did so all day Friday. So basically, this line, I think we're potentially looking at, like I said, some gap resistance. I won't bother you again explaining why that is the case. Just suffice it to say it has to do with the psychology of everyone who was caught by surprise when we gapped down back earlier in June. And when you come back to that, a lot of people say, well, man, I was blindsided back then, so if we get back to even on that day, I will sell. So probably some selling pressure. At least we saw that on Monday and Tuesday. Again, there's that possible inverted head and shoulders pattern. The only thing that makes me think that might be a little bit funny is just the fact that we had this big dip over here in the earlier part of June. So there you have it. It's where we sit right now. We'll see if this is a good line or not. If this channel remains active, then we could potentially see some nice action to get us back up into the mid 3000s. Right now we're just a little bit under 3200. Happy to be there, but remember where we were. Still, if you look at this chart and you consider the progress that's been made since the COVID scare, I think it is impressive, to say the least. So let's see if this market still has some legs under it. See if there's still some people with cash looking to invest, and if so, will they propel us back into the mid 3000s? I think the likelihood is pretty decent of that happening. So there is your weekly review for the week ending July 10th. Thanks for taking time out of your weekend to watch it, and as always, thanks for your very, very kind support. Take care.